Okay, of course, thank you for always staying tuned to the Radio 104.7 FM. I must say it's a beautiful Tuesday morning, but wet morning, I must say, because all the way from Oka down to Onitsha here, it's been raining. So anywhere you are listening to all this very morning, I don't know whether it's also the same weather condition where you are, but for us here in Anambra State, precisely where I can talk about Onitsha and Oka, it's been a wet morning, but it can't stop us from doing what we are supposed to do. So for you who are listening to us right now, whether you are in a vehicle or still at home, don't forget that you have a duty to discharge your responsibility today, because we are here this very morning to keep you company while you take on this very responsibilities. So it's a beautiful morning and another day for us to talk politics and governance on Udala Radio 104.7 FM Onitsha. From the commercial city of Onitsha, we bring you another edition of this very program, The Polity, this 23rd day of September 2025. And of course, it's 9:17 a.m. for us to begin today's conversation. Don't forget that we normally start with looking at the headlines from various newspapers before we take our conversations on topical issues. But today, of course, it promises to be exciting because we have a couple of things coming from the Ballon d'Or that was held yesterday, where Ousmane Dembele was crowned the new Ballon d'Or, and then Yamal, scooped the prize for Young Player of the Year. And then we talk about things that happened yesterday in Abuja, where there was a public hearing for constitutional review, and we learned that about 87 items are on the proposal desk. So if they are going to sell through, we do not know, but by the time we get into conversation, look at some of the items that have been proposed. Then talk about the recovery of bodies of slain police officers in Benue State. Police officers who were responding to a distress call, and there was an ambush, and many of them were declared missing. But yesterday, 8 bodies were recovered, and I must say that is quite sad. That is a contrast if you are going to compare it to where in Katsina State, where police sat down with bandits to negotiate. The same policemen are being killed by bandits somewhere in Benue State. And then talk about the MBS report on GDP growth. And I must say that yesterday, it was good news for the government of Nigeria, because that supposes to be what they can bandy as a manifestation of the reform that the government of the day said is being carried out. But for people like NLC, they find that very data distressing, saying that it does not conform or reflect the realities on ground. So you're going to see some of these very things on the pages of newspaper by the time we begin to look at the headlines. My name is Franklin Ebuka. Good morning, and we're happy to have you. I'm not alone. Olisa Mbeki is here. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning. The good people of South East. Good morning, Anambra. Good morning, Indonesia. Don't we do? Good morning, everyone. Under the reach of our voice, it's a beautiful morning. We are back in our sanctuary. We are here to pontificate the truth, and it cannot be possible without the benevolence of the God Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth, who has given us life, given us everything for us to be here. And we say, all glory be to Him. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, before we get to the headlines, of course, we normally do bring about some things that need attention. And I have to point out like 2 things that I think need attention. Now, the very first one is the activities of some security operatives. That yesterday, between 2 and 3 a.m., I found out that security operatives, the vehicle they came with is labeled Udogachi. So I might be right to say, operatives of Udogachi, they do mount this check along Oka Road around Savoy on Mondays. And what they do there is not actually to mount check to know if there is any kind of nefarious activity. So what they do there is just to man check and be collecting toll. And what happens is that Monday is usually scanty in this very state. Here in Onitsha, you don't normally see plenty of vehicles on the road, but once you come there between 2 and 3 p.m., it's always congested because security men are there collecting tolls. Then this morning too, as early as 8 a.m., policemen were already on the airport road. Like if you're coming from Oka to Onitsha here by the expressway, that's Willoughby Boulevard. Policemen were already there by 8 a.m. collecting tolls, not mounting any check. And I keep on wondering, are we going to continue this very way and hope that things are going to get better? Is it not possible that we can make a change on our own Is it not possible that we can make it on hands so that Anambra can become a place where people can reference and say, this kind of thing that happens in other states cannot be found here? So, which authority can be speaking to these people who are doing this on our roads, Tony?
The point remains that police take their order from the commissioner. First and foremost, they take their orders from their field commander, from field commander to the DPO, from DPO to commanders of certain operations, and possibly those who are on the field collecting this money. They are taking these orders based on instructions given to them either by the field commander or the commander of any operation, or those who have been sent there by the DPO, divisional police officers. And in turns, these DPOs take orders from the commissioner of police from AIG, from AIG down to inspector general of police. So there is a hierarchy. So it has nothing to do with the people or the government. So police is its own institution, supervised by the president through the office of the National Security Advisor, the Police Service Commission, and so many other people we can always mention. And then this issue of collecting money, police collecting money, is not a new thing. We've seen IGPs of police come and gone, and the story still remains the same. But what can we do about it? First and foremost, they will tell you that they are underfunded, and most times some of them may not come out to say it publicly, and each time you bring this issue before them, they will tell you, you have our lines, you have our contacts, report these people that have been collecting money, we're going to take disciplinary action. That's what you hear. So, but the truth remains that if you ask some of them one-on-one, they will tell you that they are there to make up the target given to them. I met one at the bridge, this bridgehead, under the bridge. I called him, I stopped. I called him and asked him to come. I've seen this often and often, from time to time. I don't mean I want to gift you something, but I want to find out something from you as well. Why all this? He made me understand that they're on target. But then he was speaking to me with the assurance there is no camera, there is no recording. But then I asked, what kind of target? Are you guys doing marketing? That's the question I put to him. But he eventually said that even they're posting some other things that is not just in Anambra State, that is just like this everywhere. So, my dear, it's just the problem of institutions we have in this country. I remember when Tafalo Balogun was appointed Inspector General of Police. He had that in mind. I remember when Obasanjo took over as the president in 1999. He said he will stop the incessant checks by the police. The most time we do call it then waiting you carry, because each time they flag you down, the next thing they will ask you is waiting you carry, and from that waiting you carry, they will extort money from you. But Obasanjo became president. Did he stop? The answer is no. Then even Tafa Balogun, who was appointed, I think immediately after Muslim Smith, or if I can recall their hierarchy, he said he was going to fight this. But guess what? He was touted to be sending men on the road for these collections through the IGP monitoring units and so many things. So you remember how he was fired by Obasanjo. So it was a disgrace, to be honest. And it's just rampant. If you are moving to Lagos, do you know how many checkpoints you will meet before you get?
Tony, is it that the police doesn't get enough funding from the government to run its operations? That's why they are going to roads, resorting to this kind of extortion for them to get phone. Because this very morning, what I saw is this: there's one particular officer somewhere. If you need balance, let's say if you have to give 200 naira and you have only 500 naira, so you need balance of 300 naira. There's somebody you hand over the money, and then he motions to somebody you go to and get your balance. So is it that they don't have funding, or that this has become ingrained in their system, that police now sees itself as a revenue generating agency?
Is one, they don't have the necessary paraphernalia. There was a time they attempted to come out in the open, but they were not allowed to speak. We have many divisional police headquarters in Nigeria. For crying out loud, we have so many of them, and then it is under the control of the Inspector General of Police through the DIGs, the AIGs, the Commissioners of Police. So you find out that There are these every divisional police headquarters is supposed to get something every month. So the question is, how much are they getting every month? They will make it open. The last a particular newspaper tried to expose the fund being received, they denied it. So when we are told that they usually get about 500 or 800 or 1,000 per month, so that would not do anything. They need to fuel their vehicles. They need some stationary materials. They also need some logistics for the operations. So that's why you always believe that bail is free. But the truth remains that bail can never be free. They will tell you, even boldly written at different divisional police headquarters, that bail is free. But by the time you get in there, you understand that bail is not free. And you ask what the money is being used for. These days, if you write petition to police for a particular thing to be investigated, definitely you have to pay. And you will fund the investigation, you will fund everything, you will fund the XC. It is just an anomaly. That's why many of us have been crying for state police. The truth is, the shoulder or the neck cannot carry the head. The neck cannot carry the head. And when the neck cannot carry the head, what then you do? You lessen the burden. You lessen the load. And that's exactly what many of us are canvassing. It's going to get a long way to reform the institution. Many of them now depend on that thing collected on the road. Many of them wouldn't be serving as police officers if they are to depend solely on their salaries.
Okay, so today, the police fund, police trust fund was actually born out of the need to find alternative ways of funding the police. But it appears as if that trust fund is not dealing with the gap in funding. So maybe it's high time we begin to think about other ways to get funding for the police. If that is the case, because I'm just wondering, there was a time police trust fund was enacted, and it was meant to provide an alternative funding for police. But from what we are seeing now, it appears as if that trust fund is not solving any problem, or the money is coming in, but they still want us to believe that the money is not enough. If that is the case, should we divert the security vote meant for governors to some other thing, so that we can begin to fund the police and be able to hold them accountable to what they do?
The point remains, the governors, they try as much as possible to provide logistics to the police, knowing very well that they don't take orders from them. They can only take orders from their superiors. So the governors, what they usually do, they try to dole out some logistic support as from time to time. But the truth remains that the trust fund, as you mentioned, is not enough. It's not enough, and we've seen it over time. You have over 360,000 police officers. It's of recent that we started saying something like their uniforms being sold. Being sold by the authorities. They are being given some boots, some materials. These things were not there like that before. And I was also privy to some barracks being constructed. Are you aware that the policeman who is working for this country is not supposed to pay accommodation? He's not supposed to pay school fees for the children. He's not supposed to pay hospital bills for the children. He's not supposed to pay electric bills. But they found themselves doing this thing before. When we were growing up, we saw many police barracks. I can't even think if there is any police barrack in Anambra State. I don't know. But I know when we were growing up, there was them Mopo barracks. Probably there's still one in Oka, I don't know. But the point I'm trying to make here is this. Somebody who is paid on average, let's say 150,000. And that from that 150,000, the person is going to take care of the accommodation, feeding, hospital bills, electricity bill, and other bills as well. Even energy bill. Because when we talk about energy, gas or kerosene and all that. So you find out that it's practically impossible for them not to extort. From that extortion is where they support themselves and then also support the offices of their guys. How do we stop this? The most important thing is that we must reform the system by looking at the section of the Constitution, section 214. I think that is being done currently, where we take off the burden from the federal government. The federal government cannot shoulder it alone. And the states, they now look at what should be paid. Most times you look at these vigilantes. So why they mount roadblock? First, you take what have been paid. You check what have been paid. And if most times they mount this roadblock, either to support their operation or to also support whatever they are doing. Many of them, they are being paid 50,000, 70,000. I think, let's say minimum wage. They are being paid minimum wage. If they are being paid 70, 80,000, the question is, what can that do for such person in a month? and some of them they're married, some have girlfriends, some have concubines, some have all. See, it's important to understand
okay,
these dynamics.
So certainly we have seen so many grounds why they do what they do, but there are also some other Nigerians who earn less than 50,000 naira somewhere else, but they have not maintained the road.
But they do other things because most Nigerians. Let's be honest. If you're a Nigerian and you earn 50,000, there are other shortcuts. Maybe you are not privy to. They may engage. They engage in many other things. It could be, stealing. It could be theft. It could be forgery. There's one thing or the other they will do to augment. 50,000 naira cannot take you anywhere.
Tony, that statement might not be correct because I don't think that anybody who earns less than that minimum wage must resort to an illegal way to augment.
It may not really be illegal.
There are some persons who might resort to other means to augment, but there are some persons who manage what they earn. They don't go to the road to extort anybody or get involved in a way that they must take something out of people.
We are talking about majority here. There are few that try to do other legal business or businesses to support what they are earning. We have many of them who are into so many things. They are doing this, they are doing that. The idea is to balance the book and also to make something out of it. But there are those who we know for sure. That's why we have fake drugs, fake everything in the market. Go to the market, everything fake. That's why somebody will go into his own room and produce such a water and keep running it and keep showing out some of these things. They produce drugs inside a room. So these are some of the things they do. You may not know, but there are those also who engage in legitimate business.
All right, so I have to bring in Chisom this time around because yesterday when the head coach of England women's national team, Sarina Wegman, when she was called upon to accept her Ballon d'Or award, that was a yesterday night. When she mounted the podium, she said something. She said, if Burna Boy is around, maybe we could do a little bit of dancing too. And to follow suit, if Chisom is around, maybe we could do some level of banter. Good morning, Chisom.
Good morning, Franklin. Good morning, Tony. Good morning, Nigerians. What I say, it's been a very terrible morning. And this morning, sometimes we don't know the importance of people until they are not there. This morning, OJD is the OJD junction by Pillars Fuel Station is blocked. Last I checked, probably if you're trying to navigate that axis, find an alternative route. That place is still blocked. And that is because that one man, that Red Cross official, the fair man, is not there. The one who whistles, and people laugh at how funny it is, the way he goes about the entire thing. He's not there today, and everywhere is a mess. One man. But you know what actually also hurt me really bad and got me thinking about the way we do things as Nigerians? The onta men, the ones on green polos, yes, traffic authority. But isn't it common sense that there is a traffic congestion ahead and you divide a team to say, go up there and take care of that? Why cluster in a train cycle in different batches waiting for people to beat traffic when there is a situation just a couple of poles ahead that needs fixing? Especially where you are in the traffic authority. I mean, Nigerians, it's about time we start to, really think. But Tony, when you were making the analysis about what people do to augment, I was giving Franklin a sign because this is 2025 and I grew up knowing about multiple sources of income. The average Nigerian understands that. I mean, if Dangote, Burna Boy sang about it. Dangote still find money. That's apparently why Dangote has chains of businesses. I mean, he just recently diversified into what's it called now? Into refining of oil, from sugar to down to noodles, salt, you name it. The average Nigerian, I mean, I'm not talking about the people now in the 33% or more in the multidimensional poverty bracket. The average Nigerian before now understands that one source of income takes care of little or nothing. Increase in minimum wage, decrease in minimum wage, whatever be the case, a lot of Nigerians generally multitask. That's why you have women going to the market to sell vegetables in the morning and in the evening setting up baskets to roast corn. My point is, is it a problem of the system? I mean, in terms of the schedule that these people work with, making it impossible for them to diversify. I recall one time, was it Imo State? Franklin, help me. There was a state that gave civil servants a day off to go to farm so they can start to feed themselves.
Yeah, I think Imo
or Enugu.
Under Roches.
Yes, one of those states. That is to understand the fact that there is a way that you work on a schedule. Civil servants can take care of themselves outside of what you pay the minimum wage. And so taking it back to the force, we do not even have enough men on ground. And so telling someone to probably give them some days off to take care of other things outside of the really shameful tolls that is set to collect as against securing lives and property might not necessarily be that easy. But how about we also start looking at making their lives less tasking, like you pointed out? What happens to the barracks where schools are established? Standard schools, I must point out. Not just any schools, but standard schools. Their kids can go to school and they don't have to worry or look for extra money to augment school fees. What happens to after the primary, the secondary, even tertiary education? What happens to police officers serving in a particular state, the children of tertiary education age, going to state-owned universities free of charge, or even federal universities across the country? These are some of the things we should start looking into.
Yes.
Even healthcare.
So many questions.
I also want to point out that there are so many funds police do get, but they're not accounted for. And these funds, we should begin to ask questions about it. Are you aware there are many legitimate ways police can as well make money? If police give you extracts, you pay. If they license your firearm, you pay. If they give you escorts, you pay. Even listing permit, you pay. There are so many ways they make money. But the question is, are these monies accounted for or used for the running and operations of the police? Or are this money meant for certain offices, leaving this gap amongst the rank and file until we do what we are supposed to do? Yes, they make money. There's no doubt. In fact, most companies, their net profit 0.005 goes to police funding. That is the police trust fund we are talking about. So the point remains that how are these funds being managed? Who collects what? How are they being deployed? Who accounts for it? When last was such accounts audited? They also have microfinance bank. Police have microfinance bank, and they also make money through such enterprise. So you find out that these monies they make, who takes it, who works with it, or is it for offices? And that's why each time if you get into the position of CSP or XP and you are divisional police officer, that is DPO, you are made. And most times, I don't want to talk about the ones they do. If you bring a case, sometimes they look at the case and charge you for the case. You're going to pay this for us to go about it. So there are many ways. And most times when they do it, they will tell you that Oga will take his own. So you find out that there is so much corruption.
And let me even ask. I know in Nigeria that there is this very frown somewhere that police should not be used for debt recovery. But police does that. And guess what? If police helps you to recover a debt, there is a percentage that goes back to the police. It's like an unwritten rule that if you're going to get police involved in debt recovery, know that about 10% of that very money will eventually go to the police when it's recovered. So these are the things we know that they are in operation. So I think it's high time we reformed this very police so that let the image. I must say that if the image of the police changes, you will see more cordial relationship between police and the people. Even to the point you see people even donating to the police because they want police to, properly guide them. So we'll leave this and then get to the final thing before we get to the headlines this very morning. It's about the APC campaign organization in Anambra State. So finally, the campaign is going to be inaugurated. I think it's today in Oka. Initially, it was meant to be inaugurated somewhere in Abuja, but it was put off with no explanation. But now, it's coming back to Anambra State. Some persons are trying to read meaning, trying to say that since it couldn't happen in Abuja, let's now come back home and do it the much we can.
I think when they situated the inauguration somewhere in Abuja, I remember I raised question, I raised eyebrow, and I was like, what is going on? Could it be abilities on governors who are usually in Abuja? But we understand. I've been looking for such inauguration and flag off. It's important to know that Abga has said that they won't be doing flag offs, that people have done these flags offs. They have done it on, in fact, it has happened on its own. It has been overtaken by time when the Anambra North, Anambra South, Anambra Central did these things themselves. So they wouldn't have central flag off, but they would have the finale. I think that will be on Thursday. That will be some days to the election. So they're gonna have grand finale. I don't know if APC is going to adopt such model, but now they're talking about inaugurating their campaign team. And for me, that's way too much late. But it's never late. If it's better late than never. But it's good that they must get their house together and they must demonstrate seriousness in this. They must demonstrate seriousness, and we need to see them moving rounds, telling people what they can offer and that's alternatives. And it's interesting that we've not even seen them here at Udala FM. We have not seen them. We've seen other parties coming here from time to time to showcase what they can do, and we have not seen APC and then probably Labour Party. We've not seen both of them, and we know definitely that when it comes to campaigning, you need to go around. You need to talk to the people, the market women, the traders, the artisans, the school children, and also the students and the youth, not the school children because they're not of voting age. But you can also talk to the different stakeholders. But you can also do this outreach here on radio. Not that I'm doing any advert, but it's important because it has its own audience. It has its own kind of population that people follow through. But we've not seen some parties doing it. I don't know if they're doing it. If they're doing it else, we have so be it. But if you have not come to the headquarters, it means that there is something you are not doing. There's something you are not doing. So, and we assess their seriousness based on that. We assess their seriousness, so they must demonstrate seriousness.
Okay, so you are listening to the Polity on Udala Radio 104.7 FM. When we get to bring you headlines from different newspapers and then take our conversations from the topical headlines. My name is Franklin Ebuka, and you just heard the voice of Olisa Mbeki. Chisom is also here, and all of us are going to begin from this point to bring you the headlines on the various newspapers. We have four of them: The Nation, Tribune, Punch, and The Guardian. Okay, so let's begin with the headlines we have on the Nation newspaper. This one says, Fubara, I have made peace with Wike, is on page 2. He was at the presidential villa yesterday. When he came in, he was ushered into the Mr. President. At the end of the day, he came to talk to the press, where he said that I and my principal, we have made peace. And then, another headline says, House pushes for state police, council, autonomy. Okay, let's redo this. House pushes for state police, council autonomy, others. The story is on page 3. This story is emanating from the public hearing on review of 1999 Constitution, which happened yesterday in Abuja. This one says oil agric industries drive GDP's 4.23% growth. The story is on page 2. MBS dropped that very data yesterday. El Rufai's live president claim absurd, says presidency, page 2. I think we talked about this yesterday. Then court fixes Monday to hear case on withheld Osun Council funds. The story is on page 5. Then there is an advertorial that has taken over the major part of the front page of the Nation newspaper. It's coming from Senator Yari. It's a message of appreciation to Mr. President for honoring the wedding of his daughter. And these are the headlines we have on the Nation newspaper.
I was going to ask you, what's our business with our?
It's on the front page.
But of course, on the Nigerian Tribune, banner headline here is Tinubu Fubara in father-son discussion in Asirok. He took a trip to Asirok yesterday, a courtesy call, he called it. Governors seek guidance on how to avoid further crisis in rivers, restates peace with Wike on page 3. Above the nameplate of the paper, senators divided over Natasha's resumption. The riders on that story, her trial on alleged cybercrime against Akpabio stalled, be scheduled for October 20. That's on page 16. Natasha has also herself said that this entire thing about cybercrime is double standards. Nigeria's GDP expands by 4.23% in Q1 2025 as all industry drive growth. That's on page 6. Bodies of 8 missing policemen recovered in Benue as gunmen kill APC chieftain on page 6. 4% FOB levy LCCI expresses concerns over enforcement despite of G's suspension, calls for policy clarity on page 6. US threatens a visa ban on corrupt Nigerian leaders on page 3. Nigeria loses $18 billion to financial crimes yearly. Abbas on page 4. Court fixes September 29 to hear Oshun government's motion on withheld local government funds. You can find this story on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper, and on the health segment of this paper, also on page 5. Inhaling marijuana increases risk for asthma attacks by 44%, a study has revealed.
Okay, so over to the Ghanaian newspaper, we have the banner headline says 24 states backpedal on electricity decentralization over tariff debt risk. The story is on page 6, and you see a chart there showing electricity market update. Enroll children in schools or serve jail term, Gombe government tells parents. The story is on page 25. Gunmen kill Benue APC chieftain, abduct district head in Plateau. Check page 30 of the Ghanaian newspaper. Then, above the nameplate, we have 3 headlines there. First one says, Fubara declares peace with Wike after meeting Tinubu. Is on page 3. Nigeria's economy post 4.23% growth in Q2, outperforms projections. Is on page 3. Nigeria's democracy faces collapse without INEC reforms. Bugaje warns. Is on page 3, just like what everybody has been saying, that there's need for reform. And that brings the question, what are we doing with this very review of the 1999 constitution? Are we reviewing things that matter, or we are beaten by the bush? Then this one says reverse. Stakeholders call for proof of Ibasi's 6 months administration. Check page 29 of the Guardian. And this one has a kicker. It says constitutional alteration. Tinubu, Akpabio, Abbas declare support for women's reserved seat bill. It's on page 6. Tension in Edo local government as acting chairman receive impeachment notices. It's on page 29. I don't know what is happening in Edo State. You know, on Saturday, Edo State went for local government election. Okay, let's say it's not election. They went for by-election to fill vacant spaces for some councillorship seats. I think about in 15 local government areas. But before that very election, there was a court order asking that the state should not go ahead with the by-election. But the state flouted it without vacating that and held the by-election. And yesterday they gave certificate of return to people who were elected. Now, we are seeing story that the chairman of local government area have been served impeachment notice. So what is playing out there? And then the final headline we have here says Natasha's trials tolls as women group petitions United Nations. The story is on page 30 of Guardian newspaper.
All right then, and from the Guardian newspaper, we proceed to the next paper on our desk this morning, which is The Punch. Flood disaster, states intensify action as 232 die, 121,000 displaced on page 2. Nemar lists Niger, Adamawa, Lagos among worst hit states in 2025 as farmlands, homes destroyed. And that's on page 2, like I said earlier. Beside the nameplate of the paper, Olubado, Ladoja coronation rites begin with prayers on page 2. On page 23, FX reserves hit $42 billion highest in 6 years. That's on page 23. On page 12, Fubara consults Tinubu on Rivers peace sustenance. On page 23, MBS announces 4.23% economic growth. Labor differs. These are some of the stories on the front page. Other stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
Okay, so let's begin our conversation with what happened with the GDP of Nigeria. From what MBS gave us yesterday, it looks rosy and positive, and of course, government of the day has said, you know, this boils down to the reforms that we have brought in place since we came on board. If we're going to take a shot from the story as captured by the Punch newspaper, it says that the Nigeria's gross domestic product rose by 4.23% year on year in real terms in second quarter of 2025. That's according to the latest figures released on Monday by the National Bureau of Statistics. The performance was stronger than the 3.48% growth recorded in the same period of 2024. showing that the economy gained momentum despite persistent structural challenges. The Bureau explained that the quarterly estimates followed the rebasing of GDP using 2019 as the base year, allowing comparisons to track the pace of expansion across sectors. Now, let's take an extract from that very report. It says, following the rebasing of the gross domestic product using 2019 as a base year, previous quarterly GDP estimates were benchmarked to the rebased annual estimates to align the old series with the new rebased estimates. And this procedure provides a new quarterly GDP series, which is compared to the 2025 second quarter estimates. Gross domestic product grew by 4.23% year on year in real terms in the second quarter. But what we have seen is that senior officials of the Nigeria Labour Congress have challenged the credibility of this very figure, arguing that they fail to capture the worsening conditions faced by workers and households. So are they making a point, or they're not looking to the real things that the data captured before giving out the figure which is in the positivity for Nigeria, Tony?
Many Nigerians have their thoughts about the GDP. Remember, just like the National Bureau of Statistics wowed many Nigerians. In fact, I use the word wow. Wowed many Nigerians about the growth, 4.3%. But then we understand that our GDP, from look of things, just as the president said that we are coming back. I mean, the reforms are yielding fruits, or that these fruits can easily be seen, but are they being felt by the people? If you tell us that being seen from the reports MBS keep giving us, we can say yes, they may be seen by these reports, but are they being felt? Because if you look at it, the critics, they argue that these reports they do, the NBS do dish out, understate economic hardships like inflation and joblessness, certain economic realities. But NBS will do what they know how best to do. They usually roll out some of these figures. From, if you look at the recent report from late 2024 and into 2025, it showed that PDP growth figures hovering around 3.13% to 3.46% for various quarters. In fact, if we look at quarter three means the second to last quarter in 2024, it was at about 3.46%. And if you look at quarter one in 2025, it was at 3.13%. But if when we talk about quarters, the whole entire year is divided into 4 quarters. Quarter one is January, February, March. Quarter two is after March, you have April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. That's how they are divided. So quarter one, but now we are talking about from the look of things, we are gradually rounding off that of quarter three. But from the report they've just released, they try to mirror the ones that has been elapsed or the one that has passed by, so that they can do their calculations. So it's important for us to understand how these things are done, because if you look at the 4.3%, which is tied to broader economic announcement, but I understand that many Nigerians are saying yes. From if you look at experts, they are saying thumbs up. And when we talk about GDP, it's important. I have said it many times. For those who may not know, the meaning is the total monetary value of all final goods and services produced within a country over a specific period of time. Over a specific period of time, and we're not doing yearly now. By the time we are done with 2025, probably they will give us our yearly growth, but they are looking at it from quarterly basis, just like I explained earlier on, because it has to measure the size of the economy. The gross there means that it doesn't subtract depreciation of capital assets. Domestic there means that it is, in fact, it counts only for productions within the country's border, whether by locals or foreigners. And you remember, it has always been used to compare economic performance over time or between countries or between intervals. So the point, because I know how these things are being put together, what is the total monetary value of all the final goods or finished goods and services within that period what percentage growth do we record? I think that's what it basically is. And they are telling us that it's 4.3. Remember, Mr. President, in his projections, they have projected about 6 point something percent. The highest we ever attained was during the time of Jonathan, which was about 6 point something. That was the highest we ever attained. Under the Buhari administration, we recorded 2 successive negative growths, and that was how we found ourselves into recession mode. And we suffered, I think, 2 successive recessions under those periods, telling you that instead of us progressing, we are retrogressing. That was what the negative growth means. But so far, Mr. President will tell you how he came in, where he made the GDP growth, and what has transformed over time.
Now, in a layman's way, when you talk about GDP, you're talking about the level of productivity we have in the country. So does that mean that it's possible that we have productivity, and it's also possible that Nigerians who are engaged in these productive activities, they might not be having, maybe more extra income or extra profit on what they are doing, but they are productive?
Yeah, many Nigerians, there's no doubt they're productive. In fact, the work we're doing here, that is productive. It's part of the GDP. Because once you're going to be paid for the services you are rendering, it's productivity. Those market men and market women, for you to sell your goods and services, that's productivity. For those who produce those things, that's productivity. And for those who go to farm and till the land and get something out of it and sell the farm product, that's productivity. And for those who consume, consumption is part of it, because if you don't produce, you will not also be able to consume. So it's all about goods and services. In fact, if you look at GDP, if you look at expenditure approach, you have something like C plus I plus G plus SA, I think SA and M in bracket, where the C there is consumption, household spending, where I there is investment, and even the G, the government spending on goods and services. Then X minus M, that has to do with the net export minus import. But that's not what we are going to do here, because it also has its own income approach in calculating. But the key thing is, what the MBS is trying to let us know is that, yes, we are having a record growth against where we are coming from. But the critics are saying these things are not felt by the people. It has not changed the living condition, the living standard, the way things are done, the income of households. It has not changed.
Okay, so let's look at this so that we would be able to do this very juxtaposition, whether it is automatically expected to impact on the lives of the people, because government is saying that the growth was driven by appreciable improvement across the oil and non-oil sectors, with stability in the country's oil sector and expansions in agriculture, industries and services sectors, accumulating in above average performance output. Now look at the breakdown. It shows that the oil sector grew by 20.46% in second quarter of 2025, as against 1.87% recorded in the first quarter, riding on the back of double-digit growth in crude oil production. Now NBC is reporting that crude oil production averaged 1.68 million barrels per day in second quarter of 2025, compared to 1.41 million barrels per day we were doing in the second quarter of 2024, because we're comparing 2 years now, last year and this very year. And they are saying that this represents about 19.1% growth in the difference between what we were doing last year and what we are doing now. Then you now look at the contribution of the oil sector to GDP. It increased from 3.97% in the first quarter of 2025 to 4.05% in the second quarter of 2025. They look at non-oil sector. They said we recorded growth of about 45 basis points, expanding by 3.64% in second quarter of 2025, as against 3.19% in the previous quarter. And they recorded some places like a service sector and co-agriculture, places where they said we recorded some growth in this very area. So does that mean that there's a way we can align the reforms and what is going on now? Because if agriculture is recording growth, can we say government has been able to do enough to reflect in this growth we have in agriculture?
It depends on the nature of growth. Definitely, there are countries that have GDP growth over 10%, and that will be their target. Will be targeting over 10% GDP growth. But one would say that, judging by where we are coming from, is appreciable drift At least it is commendable. There's no doubt to say you commend the government. But the question is it fault? Yes, agriculture, farmers from the last I checked, have not been able to access, farmlands. I don't know if much work or much agricultural activities are going on in Plateau State and Benue State. These are places known for farming. And then if you also look at places like Nasarawa State and even some parts of Niger, and you can also talk about KB when you talk about rice, these farmers back on trenches. The last we spoke, I think there was a time Mr. President told us that the government acquired over 2,000 tractors. The question is, are these tractors being deployed to use? Have farmers started using these tractors? There are so many questions apart from banding figures. Most Nigerians these days don't believe in figures. What they believe is the one they can feel and touch. Many of them have become thermoses, and their kind of thermos is where they have to feel it and touch it. So if you banding these figures, it means nothing to many Nigerians. I've seen that over time. And when you talk about GDP growth, and it does not reflect in household income, do people make extra income through these productivities? Leave consumption, leave wage, leave rent, because some of these things could be starting over time. But do they make extra income as a result of this growth? And because if you make extra income, your living condition, your living standard is improved. Yes, we can also agree that some price reductions. We've seen some level of inflations dropping, and we've seen some farm produce, but people, according to some critics, is as a result of the harvest season. That's what they said. But it doesn't mean that government is not doing something, because we've seen the monetary policies of the central bank, we've seen the fiscal policies of the government, and we've been able to put them together, just oppose them. And we've seen how central bank has been tightening up the monetary policy to ensure that people, at least money means or whatever value, each time that is found.
So is there any way, how can we get more value from the service sector? Why am I asking this? If you look at the distribution, you see that from what government put out, I'm talking about the MBS, they said that the service sector, agriculture and industries accounted for 56.53%, 26.7%, and 17.31% respectively. So service sector contributed about 56.53%, then agriculture 26.17%, and industries 17.31%. I'm paying attention to this service sector because I think that's where many Nigerians play, and many young persons have gone into that very sector and dominated. Is there a kind of environment you think that needs to be created so that people can maximize the very sector?
We know very well, all over the world, the service sector contributes the largest chunk of GDP all over the world. All over the world. I've not seen a country where the service sector is lacking when it comes to GDP contribution. And if you look at the growth you are talking about, where the MBS has said that very sector contributed with agriculture, about 56% growth is expected. There's no doubt. And you said, would that be the sector the people will go on and dominate? It tells you quite a lot. Yes, Nigerians have been dominating that, there's no doubt. And we're seeing so many services rendered across different lines, formal and informal. And remember, we do not even also mention the informal sector, which is also a very vital sector, which most time is neglected. So it's important we understand these dynamics. But the point remains that there's so much work to do. These things do not reflect on the standard of living, the poverty level, and it has not changed Nigeria from being the poverty capital of the world. It has not changed the fact that we have many malnourished children across the country. It has not also changed the fact that we have about 20 million out-of-school children. There are so many things this record growth, yes, is a gradual process, do not also depict. We are concerned about so many goals, SG goals and Millennium Development Goals. There are so many things. How have we been able to improve on the quality of healthcare services we are giving to the people? Would this growth also impact on such service? How can this growth also impact on the level of security? How can this growth also impact on the level of education many Nigerians are able to access? And if these things do not link up or reflect in those areas, people will tell you you don't know what you're talking about. So, and when you talk about service sectors, it's important that for us, to those who are trading, though, because we have seen those traders that are part of service sector, and I know very well that those who are into information technology, transportation and storage, there's so many of them, education, public administration, so many. In fact, that sector has different components, smaller components In fact, it also runs through so many things: finance, banking, insurance, real estate service, art, entertainment, and recreation. These are so many components of service sector. That is the very sector that accounts for the larger chunk. But the key thing, just like I mentioned before now, is how are these growths mentioned, brandished, bandied by MBS reflect on some of these growth? Most times I know they should be independent, there's no doubt. But if they come up with some level of growth, you see government officials questioning. But now, we're waiting for likes of P2B to talk, because he will make comment on this. Article will come out and also do his own talking. So we are going to look at what the opposition. We are going to look at what.
Now that you mentioned P2B, should he not talk? Because like, you know, the day the wife of the president marked her birthday, you know, he wished her a memorable happy birthday. But in that same birthday message, he talked about how libraries have been left moribund. It's quite unfortunate that a private person is the one calling for rebrand of libraries and what have you not. And many persons, even some of his acolytes, some persons who have been on his side, they said he made a mistake by lumping the two messages in one, that he should have concentrated, do the happy birthday, then in another tweet say whatever he wanted to say. That the way he lumped it up seemed as if he was making mockery of the birthday of the first lady.
I think it depends on understanding and how you comprehend that very message. We've seen Obi over time making the statement that your gift, whatever you wish to give to him during his birthday, he would appreciate if you donate this to hospitals, donate them to schools and to help their causes. We've seen that. And but then he's trying to maintain that the National Library is a government property. It's purely government responsibility for you to say that whatever people want to give to you will be used to develop the library. Is pure indictment on the part of government, because it's their responsibility, and that should also have budgetary allocation. But if you are targeting private libraries or private hospitals or some of these things, it is understandable, but it does not take away the fact that it is the responsibility of the government. But I think the First Lady has not said that it is not the responsibility of the government. She feels that it's a need there, even when that is not attracting government attention. But Obi is saying, for the fact that you identify that need and knowing fully well that it is the responsibility of government, and for government not doing it, and you hoping to use what people will give you privately as gift for funding of such, national library, is a national disgrace. And then it depends on the on the understanding. It depends on the understanding.
A lot of persons have also looked at that based on the position of the two individuals involved. At the point Obi made those calls, was he a government official? Last I checked, the last time Obi held any official office in the government was when he was the governor of Anambra State. And so looking at the time frame, that is what some persons have based their arguments on. He wasn't a government official when he made those calls. And so for the wife of the president, while she doesn't hold an official office, we don't, but it was also in this government that we had conversations, as much as it wasn't approved, about allocations being set aside for the office of the first lady for her projects and all of that. And also it was also the same first lady who once said that her family doesn't need Nigeria's money, and so it would have and would I say almost naturally been interpreted as, we have so much and we can even give you from what we have. But that notwithstanding, Tony, when we were speaking about the entire, what I call it, jubilation over our GDP, 1.1% from where we were, and looking at where we are coming from, it looks like it's a big deal. We're making progress. But of course, I would always pause to look at where we are coming from. 65 years post independence, and look at the kind of stuff that we still bandy. And when we talk about these figures are like figures that do not even match with the realities of the people. So while these figures are there, possibly truly because certain things have been put in place in terms of taxation harmonization, in terms of talk about blocking loopholes in revenue generation, diversifying revenue generation and all of that. We look at the fact that at the end of it all is the fact that so many things that could help these things trickle down to affect the lives of the average Nigerian still have not been considered. Look at the fact that we are looking at tightening revenue blocks, but there is still this over dependence on petrol products, on crude products. And if we are able to narrow this down like this present administration promised, surely we would have more money at the end of the day, and also the the living conditions of Nigerians would be better. But unfortunately, the reverse is the case. And so, while the government is looking at this as a plus, the people are looking at it as a mere academic exercise. And so, the question at this point would be, what do we need to do to make sure that these things affect the lives of the people? If you're having a 1.1% increase, is it not okay that the people feel some kind of 1.1% relief at least? Yes, I know the cost of food items have reduced, but matching it with the other realities on ground, are the people faring better? We all know the answer, Tony.
Yeah, people may not fare better, just like as we know, or just as is the case, but government can do better. They must get their fiscal policies right. You must know the areas you target when it comes to your expenditures. Is important. I don't know if the fiscal policies of the government is faring better from the monies we are making from both oil and non-oil sectors. Where are you channeling your expenditures or the requisite investment? So some people have said it has been an elitist thing that this present government, what it does is to target those elites or elitist projects, super highway, rail, and so many things. But what are those projects you are targeting for the poor for the poor masses? But we understand there are some other projects that the government has done for the poor, just like the social intervention programs. And these social intervention programs, the present administration has mapped out. See, many of them seem not to be working outside the NEL fund. I can always say NEL fund is working. It's working outside the NEL fund.
Tony, just for what to make this very clarification, because I think somehow we're trying to narrow to the point that if we talk about GDP, that there must be a corresponding impact on the life of the common man, which in the real sense of GDP, it does not necessarily mean that, because GDP simply means is a measure of total goods and services produced in a country over a period of time. Now, what it shows is this: it shows the size and growth of an economy, showing whether you are going forward or whether you are going backward. It does not directly show how people are living.
No, sometimes it does, because if you are producing more, just like use a farmer as being a country, and a farmer who produce a lesser farm produce this year and goes on to produce bigger one the next year and next 2 years, does it affect the way the farmer live as a person? Yes, it measures the size of his farm, measures the size of his farm produce, measures the weight, measures everything. But it does also affect the way, because if you grow, it definitely going to affect your standard of living, no matter how you try to look at it. But the major thing you look at is the growth level, where you were and where you are heading. But just like I said, if you use a case of a farmer who you can refer to be a country where his farm produce for this past year has a growth when compared to this year, the question is, would it affect the way he lives as a person? It should. And that's where so many people are coming from. Yes, we know it's just a measurement to show the size of the economy, to show the growth we've recorded in this area. And if you go back to look at the report, it tells you different sectors, growth recorded in every sector. So if the service sector we're talking about have been able to list many components or many units in that very sector. For instance, we are talking about trade. A trader who has recorded more sales is expected that it will affect his way of living. If you are talk about banking, if a bank has done so well in its operation, it's expected that through that they should also see ways to reward the workers, which also affect the. See, you can break these things down in a very simple way that people understand. So, but is most times not quick measure. It doesn't come so sudden. It is a gradual thing. It tickles down gradually, and it's expected.
So let's look at what happened yesterday in Abuja, because there was a public hearing on the amendment of the 1999 Constitution, which has been ongoing for some time. And from what we gather, there are 87 issues in the constitutional review, and these very issues range among state police, local government autonomy, special seat for women. There are some of these very proposals in the review of the 1999 constitution, and yes, when they had that very public hearing, of course, we had many people who spoke there. The Speaker of the House of Reps was there. Then the Chairman of the committee, who happens to be Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps, Benjamin Kalu, he was also there. Federal government was represented by the SGF, George Akume. Even the British Council, British government was also there, and so many other persons. They had their time to speak on those issues. And they're quite interesting because the things that are being considered, some of them are extensive electoral reforms, including proposals for independent candidacy, the establishment of an electoral offences commission, a fixed timeline for determination of pre-election matters to ensure that the will of the people is never again subverted by legal technicalities, and what have you not. So plenty of things they are on the card. The issue of devolution of powers, strengthening of public and traditional institutions, as well as citizenship and indigenship. I also saw a proposal which was making a case for a council of traditional rulers who can advise the president on certain issues and what have you not. Like I said, 87 of them. But I want us to look at these things. Are these issues for amendment actually reflective of the dire need of the country that needs to be taken care of?
I guess many of them, there's no doubt. In fact, there are 87, but you can group them into 13 thematic heading. And then if you do the 13 thematic areas of the 87 amendments, you talked about electoral reforms. I think you nearly finished that, but then you omitted the electronic transmission of election results for transparency and diaspora voting rights, recognizing remittances and contributions from Nigerians abroad. They remit so much foreign exchanges. In fact, they remit so much. So why won't we give them voting rights? Somebody that most times you look at our foreign reserve or our dollars or foreign earnings is mostly incumbent on their remittances. So we must give them something to appreciate such remittances. I think that's by the way for diaspora voting. And then we talk about judicial reforms. I think enhancing judicial independence, timeline for civil and criminal cases to reduce delays, and talking about review of penalties for certain capital offenses. So local government reform is also part of the amendment proposals. Yes, remember the Supreme Court granted financial autonomy to local governments, but people have been talking about administrative autonomy. Can they have that? Remember, I have argued that what Supreme Court ended up with was granting them financial autonomy. It did not touch administrative autonomy as we have under Section 7. But this time around, the proposals we have before this Constitutional Review Committee talks about administrative autonomy for local government, and also establishment of a national local government electoral commission as an independent body that will conduct their own election, as we have INEC that does for both the state and the federal. There will be establishment of national local government electoral commission that will conduct elections for the local government. But I know governors will not allow this. This one will not see the light of the day. Quote me anytime. Then the issue of security and policing. We talk about the issue of state police, community police, local government police. These things are on the decks and very needed. We are in a dire need of such, there's no doubt. And also the issue of constitutional recognition of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps mandate, including protection of infrastructure and regulation of private security. They have an act. They are not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. So we're talking about NSCDCS. So they need to be included in the Constitution and be given constitutional recognition. Then you talk about the devolution of powers. They talk about transfer of certain powers like policing resources. This time around, they want to make it look that the minerals and the oils will be somehow under the control of the state to allow competitiveness. But I doubt if the federal government will allow what they have to slide away or slip away from them. But then they're also looking at practical physical federalism to improve resource allocation. Physical federalism in the sense that state must have control of certain resources in their domain and pay what they should pay to the government and the center in line with 1963 Republican Constitution. I think that is just that. So there is also issue of traditional institutions. They are talking about to recognize traditional rulers as peace building, community security, and advanced reconciliation. In fact, giving them constitutional recognition. But this we see how that will pan out. I know many state government may not like giving traditional rulers constitutional recognition. The issue of citizenship and indigenship, and also strengthening of institutions. That's where I'm so much concerned. Strengthening of institutions. When you talk about this strengthening of institutions, I've said the key thing when appointments are to be made into these institutions, the president.
My comment here because it's good that you went to this very area. I must tell you that I have concerns about by the time you begin to see the details of the way these things are worded, you might be disappointed. I'll tell you that I've been able to pick 68 of these things the way they are worded, and some of them might not necessarily address the structural challenge you have in this very country. I haven't seen anyone talking about the equity question, about other regions, other geopolitical zones having more number of states compared to Southeast. I have not seen anything trying to address that.
But they talked about state creation.
I haven't seen it. You know what it is like. You know what the process is like. I haven't seen anyone talking about, do we get to simplify the process so that it becomes less cumbersome, whereby whenever the case comes up, those who have the numbers get to have the majority, and those who don't have numbers, they don't have their day on such issues. Take for instance, I'll just give you this very one here that talks about there's one very law which is critical, or one proposal critical. They said they are trying to make free, compulsory, and basic education a fundamental right of all citizens under Chapter 5 of the Constitution. Quite interesting. Then there's one they say they want to correct the error in the definition of the boundary of the FCT as Abuja. They look at the one about traditional institution. They want to establish a national and state council of traditional rulers to advise the president and governors on matters related to customs, security, and public order. Let me even pick up this very one. Of what need do we have this already? Like now we have traditional institutions being handled by the state, and we have seen that these institutions have become almost an appendage of the state government. So if we're going to recognize the 9 in the constitution, what difference would that make for us?
I think it's all about assigning roles to them. If you give them constitutional recognition, you also give them constitutional responsibilities and constitutional functions.
So what's different would it make in the life of people? Because now, let me give you an example.
Okay.
When traditional institution was on its own without government interference, without government coming to give somebody certificates to become the Igwe or whatever, there was this very way of independence of these very traditional institutions. They were doing their things without influence of government or interference, and they were independent. They can decide on what to do and nobody interfere. But these days they are in the pocket of the governors. So I'm just wondering that if you are going to assign the constitutional rules, what would it going to bring to our lives? In what way would it change what they bring to table in terms of governance structures?
May I also ask, is this going to in any way warrant allocation of funds to this body? Because at the end of the day, we should be looking at cutting down the cost of governance. And by way of what is being proposed there, that institution is supposed to be funded by the government. And what difference does it make going by what we have at the moment? And of course, these are supposed to be individuals. I mean, Tony, I don't know. I do know actually that before colonization, the Igbo leadership system, I'm using Igbo now for instance, was in such a way that these kings absolutely had their lives. They were just sometimes by order of absolute monarchy, or sometimes selected among the people to lead, but they still had the things that they do. You get, some of them have businesses, some of them are industrialists, manufacturers, and all of that. Now if we start to have this kind of would I call it some sort of official institutionalization, isn't this going to take us back to a sort of would I call it modern and more organized monarchy, where we are also going to be expending money on people who are already making their money for no reason?
I think one thing we should also understand is, why did government come in the first instance in trying to put everything under control? There was abuse. Everybody, before you know it, everybody has become a traditional ruler, and there was a deliberate proclamation of tradition. In fact, we see balkanization, and there was crisis and bred insecurity. Government came in to stem the abuse anybody wakes up one morning and becomes a traditional ruler of his own kingdom and start fighting the next person, throwing the community into turmoil, throwing the community into disarray. That was how government came in, to regulate the activities and also issue certificate of recognition, so that not everybody that wakes up one morning becomes a traditional ruler. Now you asked a question: how would this constitutional function reflect in the communal living in their domain? At least let's start with the communal living in their domain. Many of them have said you hold them responsible for insecurity in their kingdom, but where you do not assign any function to them, then they cannot work when they have no assigned constitutional duties in their own right. That is what they said. That is the need for this public hearing. In fact, we have started our own public hearing here, because what we are doing is artificial public hearing. But I tell you one thing: if you give them such role that you are responsible for insecurity in your kingdom, and the mode you can activate when there is intelligence, because you need intelligence to conquer, they cannot feel safe to give government intelligence report because they feel they are not part of the government. So, but by the time you give them constitutional role, most intelligence, definitely, we hover around them, they will be able to process it and confidently give government intelligence report on what happened, those involved, and how it happened, and the issue of peace building. You ask, would they be giving money? Even now, they are being given stipend. No doubt, some traditional institutions and traditional rulers in this country, depending on the state, because they are under the control of the state. There is no way they will be under the control of the federal government, because federal government has no jurisdiction on traditional issues, and that's why people are querying the federal government over the issue of Sanusi and Emir Bayero, over who becomes who and who becomes not. So you've seen how they also allege that Mohammed Lim and the Court of Appeal judge, when he was there as the Federal High Court judge, what he did. But in all of this, that is essence of this debate. If you think there is no need of giving them any constitutional role where they can help in intelligence gathering, especially in area of security, so be it. If you also think they should be giving constitutional assignment where it will be put before them, it will be made known to them that you are the intelligent heartbeat of this nation. You must bring the intelligence, security intelligence, in a way that it could be used to help the areas of insecurity. So be it. So it's all about debate, and I believe many people are in affirmation that they should be given constitutional duties, so that you don't take them for a ride. But that is, by the way, but something comes for it. But in any way you want to do it, they will still be under the state government, because it won't be something federal government will take up, because we are trying to remove some of these 67 items already under the exclusive legislative list down to concurrent list, and that is what is going on. Devolution of power we talked about. Okay,
because we're also hoping that they will be able to also to deal with the big elephant in the room, the issue of appointment of INEC chairman, the issue of how do we reform judiciary to become independent, so that the judiciary will no longer be in the pocket of the executive, because the way it is now,
it is in the pocket of the executive.
The executive is pockets everybody, appoints who becomes the chief judge and what have you not. So those things that can help to re-engineer our democracy, are they captured in this amendment process? We'll go for this very commercial break. Once we return, we're going to hit the phone line. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Udala Radio 104.7 FM. Seriously authentic.
My people, I present to you the most preferred governorship candidate for Anambra State, John Chuma Nwosu of the African Democratic Congress, ADC. John Chuma Nwosu is ready to take Anambra State from insecurity to peace, from regression to progression. Vote John Chuma Nwosu. Vote ADC, African Democratic Congress.
ADC! 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 Quality bread, Wendy's bread. For your family breakfast, Wendy's bread. How about it on the Dosialo? Wendy's bread. Mama, Papa, they like Wendy's bread. Not you turn and do Wendy's bread. Even children, they like Wendy's bread. Wendy's bread. Wendy's bread. You get it better, tasty, we go sweet your belly. Wendy's bread. Wendy's your body, choma. Wendy's bread, the champion.
Wendy's bread, your tasty bread. You can contact us on our official address, Second Business Park, Enugu Road, GRA, beside Onitsha, Anambra State. We also have another branch at St. Michael Plaza at Tani Road. Also contact us on 070-1149-1571. Wendy's bread, your tasty bread.
Wendy's bread.
Udala Radio 104.7 FM. Seriously authentic.
Alright, thank you for staying tuned to the Radio 104.7 FM. You are listening to the Polity Tuesday edition, this 23rd of September 2025. My name is Franklin and Ebuka. I have Dr. Olisa Mbeki and Chisom Chinedu together. We are on this very show, and it's time for us to open the phone lines to have your input into what we have said so far. Two things actually we have dwelt so much on, but we find time to accommodate some of that. At 0803-221-6973 or 0803-827-6694. Don't forget that we are live on our Facebook page. You can join us, and that's the breaking news that we're going to bring your way regarding what has been going on between the Senate and the Senator Natasha Polity. It seems there will be light at the end of the tunnel because they have decided to open her office in preparation for her return. Let's go to the phone line now. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
I'm excited. Good morning, everybody.
Yes, good
It's a
morning.
happy day. My lady, Olisa Mbeki,
You're welcome.
you, and my friend Franklin. You see, a lot of things happen in our country. I will just be picking them as we go on, just the bit that I can, or just it from there's a state. You see, our value, we are talking of growth in our economy. I recall when Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala came visiting, they told her the growth was going on, and I think it's in that frame of mind that we keep saying we have growth and all that. We must keep in view what our priorities are, our values, and then, of course, take care of these figures we are panting all over the place. How about security? What good do you have in that? Has it stopped, or has it decreased or minimized or whatever? It hasn't. So you don't have security. And you say you have growth. And this growth, you mentioned, Katoni, the growth you mentioned are elitist in nature. It's not for us, the common people. We are talking of our own kind of growth. Is I want to have food. I want to have hospital. I want to have transportation. Just the basic things of life. Housing. Did this your growth reflect in all those things? Did it reflect on our way of living today? If you do not remember where you are coming from, you must at least have a think of where you're going to. And that is what we should be doing. The government comes up and says, they have growth. They have growth. Yes, growth in your economy. You talked about the kind of growth you think or you believe they are funding on. Now, look at our telephone system. Isn't this one of it? How good is it today? What of the taxes we are paying on that? Is it better? Let's try to humanize our kind of situation in Nigeria. Nigeria is a very beautiful country. Nanya, excuse me, only am so the car to one that may go see the so. We are done with lying. Let us appreciate God and practicalize what we have. Instead of food is becoming, forget this is rainy season. So naturally you have food, like vegetables and all this perennial food products all over the place. They come when the rain comes. What of the long-term one now? Let's talk about what is hurting us. What is hurting us is our welfare, our social welfare, and our livelihood. Can we ask them to go back there, please? As for Mrs. Tinubu and her library, well, if you don't dream of being a prince, you don't dream of being a king.
Thank you for following. Hello, good morning.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Franklin.
Good morning.
Yeah, Dr. Olisa Mbeki and Chisom. Very good morning to you, though.
You're welcome.
Chidi Chukuma joining you from Bo.
Go on.
Let me speak on this economic growth they are talking about. I don't know the kind of growth they are talking about, because looking at the living condition of the ordinary people, you see our currency, the disparity between our currency and the foreign currency. There is no growth without effect on the purchasing power of our currency. There can never be any growth without affecting the living condition of the people. So if you are telling the hungry people who are angry that there is a growth, when the poverty is ravaging and the gap between rich and the poor is still growing astronomically, what kind of growth are you talking about? They should stop disturbing us because we are wiser now. All this thing that is going on, I've seen it as just a campaign. When somebody has just decided to forcibly clearing his scorecard for the next election, that is what is going on. The campaign for the next election is indirectly going on. And that is why every time they talk of growth, I don't want to rely on the report of Okonjo Iweala when he visited the Aso Rock, because you can't just tell somebody that is not doing well in his face. It's just like it. But that is when somebody describes it as you come to somebody's house to criticize him or her. You may receive a blow on that. That is what will happen that day. There is no growth at all, as far as I'm concerned. Good morning.
Okay, good morning, Chukuma. Hello, good morning. Okay, 0803-221-6973 or 0803-827-6694. Good morning.
Hello, good morning, my speaker, Olisa Mbeki. My name is Olisa calling from myself. Let me say something. All this thing that is going on is just a make propaganda. If things is going better, if the poor masses will say that things are going better. Have you ever come across the video that Joseph Wike was cooking okra soup? Just go and say the content of that soup and tell me that if Joseph Wike understands, that was the time that things was very, very even difficult for Nigeria. So these people don't care. I have a customer that they normally go to Oko market and kill a full cow. Now that cow is very cold, they will kill a full cow and to keep it in the fridge. You will see the RSF and some people using it to do jamboree. So that because if you go to the quarter, a constant light, everything, anything they put in the fridge is 100% sure that it's going to block. Nothing will happen to it. They will go to the market and buy a carton of ice fish, catfish, any kind of fish and put in the fridge. That kind of person is telling me, we, the people that is in the street, we come out and tell them that, things are going down. No. Like, I won't lie. I won't lie that the last time that I bought rice, I understand that rice is going down a bit. But not the one that will come out to be singing it in our ear, that this is going down. What about oil? Oil you see up there, the red oil. that they normally produce in our country. You see up there, beans, or you're talking about beans, okay, some of them, but not the one that will come out and say that this one is doing this. No, we are the people that is going to come out and tell them that this is exactly what. No, not them.
All right, thank you. Thank you. For clarity purposes, of course, GDP is not the same as inflation. They are two different things. Inflation measures the price of goods and services, but GDP measures the productivity in economy. So I need us to understand these two. GDP is not GDP. The GDP report that came out is not saying that price of goods are going down. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that there is a growth in the amount of things that are produced in the country. That's what GDP is talking about. Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you, Franklin.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for coming aboard.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I'm calling you for. Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Going straight to the point, I think I don't really know what we are working on. The statistics made available on the drop in the food items. This as a result of.
Hello, Dike, hold on.
Yes.
Hold on. I just clarified this very thing that GDP is not speaking to the price of food items in the market. GDP is talking about productivity in the economy.
Economic growth.
The economic growth and the expansion. That's what GDP speaks to.
Really, we have to, even if you talk about the economic growth, it has to reflect to those who are making use of the economy, which is you don't take away cost of living. I don't know if you get where I'm coming from. You say a single servant 200,000 for a month, you make it up for him. These are the indices you need to look at. So you don't take that away. And I was just trying to get a point here. The point I'm trying to make, this drop as a result of people not having money to feed 3 times in a day, because I know we are on ground and we see the cost of the people. There are those who are not even sure taking breakfast before leaving this morning. So the drop in the we are seeing, even the drop in fuel price by Dangote putting up all efforts to make the economy stronger, is this as a result that many people have packed their vehicles or sold up their vehicles? So these are things we need to look at, make an investigative journalism and find out the real facts on ground, why those are coming or why the economy, is booming or not booming. So these are the things that when you look at it, you find out that is it as a result of poverty level that the people have found themselves in, or as a result of the effort of because the last time I checked, I think the bandit is still holding some local government ransom in the north. And these are food producing areas. You look at Benue, you look at all these food producing areas, you find out that there are a lot of hostilities going on there. So these are things that when you look at it, you find out that I think they're so much in a hurry to come out and unveil this. But from my own angle and where I'm coming from, I'm seeing it that it's as a result of people not having money to purchase that, because the tube of yam is about 2,000, or you talk about rice, talk about fuel. How many people can fuel their cars today? So a lot of people pack their cars, and that seems to be a little bit stable. So for the rich, so I think this from my own angle and from my own the way I'm looking at this, I'm just of the opinion that it's a result of a drop of the people. Maybe let's say 50 or 40% of the people not being able to catch up with the reality.
All right, thank you, Dike. Okay, don't forget we are live on our Facebook page, Udala Radio 104.7 FM. You can just get to the page and drop your comment. Hello. Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
Yes. Good morning.
Yeah, it's me, Boniface.
Boniface from where?
Yeah, Boniface is in Owerri State.
All right. Go on, sir.
Yeah, I'm speaking about Ngozi Okonjo well.
Hello. You said Mbise is where?
Hello.
Did you say Mbise is in Owerri State?
Yeah. So I'm speaking about Ngozi Okonjo well. Visiting Asoro.
So I'm sorry. I'm not sure if you're following the program, because somebody made reference to her in his analysis. So we're talking about Ngozi Okonjo here, and be saying Owerri State. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around.
I think that's some sort of mistake. When you're used to saying something, Could be a mistake.
I think it was deliberate. Hello, good morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Your name?
Good morning. Our brother,
Okay, so hold on, Mr. Ignatius, hold on. I'll prefer if you call, say good morning and go on, so that we can maximize our time. Go on, sir.
Okay, let me continue. See, based on the analysis our teacher gave us, what a common man we have faced in the economic growth in this country. When you reflect to in our market, in our buying and selling, what we say is true. Our economy is growing, is appreciated, but had it illustrated in our buying more commodities. Until then, as people will say, we are happy. It's not reflecting. Common people don't know about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. Let's hear you. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Are you there? Hello? Alright then, just to let you know that we are live on Facebook at Udala Radio 104.7 FM. You can drop your comments right under the video or the post related to the show. Good morning.
Yeah, thank you, Chisom. You can see the good morning of Franklin.
Yes.
This is Monday Johnson, and I'm calling from Onitsha.
Go ahead, Monday.
I just have a question to ask to Tony Mbeki, the speaker. On the Constitution Amendment, there was something I heard about state policy. There was this caveat that the federal police will come in to intervene when mismanagement is spotted in state policy. I think I got that yesterday because I followed the review, the national presentation or what. I followed it yesterday, and when I got that caveat, I was asking myself, will this not make nonsense of that state policy? Because today we are suffering from what they call gross misconduct in our state houses of assembly. Here, they will just tag anything gross misconduct because the Constitution did not clearly define what gross misconduct should be. Now, going by this, that if any mismanagement is spotted, that the federal police will intervene. Mr. Speaker, please, I want to ask, what will this make out of this state policy? Will it not make nonsense of it entirely? Please, we need to know more about that. Good morning.
All right, good morning. Thank you. So, of course, we have to go to our Facebook page so that we get to acknowledge the post we have there already.
All right, then, a number of them here. Good morning to you too. Chinedu Basil checks in from Nsugbe. He says, this Udogachi security men also mount here at Obele Mili in Nsugbe collecting tolls. They even go as far as giving numbers to Keke riders with marker. Please, we need government intervention. Thank you. Monty says, okay, good to have you here, Monty. Bolaha Abidoye, he says, please, Tony, I think you didn't say everything that policeman told you. Please, I'd like to hear everything so we can know the reason for extortion. Mao Lebara, this US visa ban is a welcome development. Corruption is flourishing in Nigeria because we do not abide by the rule of law and fear of God. Said that powerful people in government are bleeding this government to death through monumental corruption and lawlessness. Until stiffer penalties like death sentences, imprisonment, and forfeiture of wealth so corruptly earned are introduced, we will make no headway. Let's be sincere in this fight against corruption and not using decorative language about it. Master of SJP says, please should not be the country's problem. To me, Nigerian police are suffering in terms of earning. Ordinary police should be paid like footballers and boxers. They don't have time for themselves, fighting crime on a daily basis. Okay, Ifediegu, thank God. The issue of extortion going on in the Nigerian police department is getting out of hand, and the government of this day is fine with it. God bless Udala Radio. And Mbechi Obi, I want to talk about our police officers. It is very important we have state police. Obina Williams, he says, okay, Obina, I doubt that what you heard is a justification of the Agune Chamber security officials collecting toll. However, Tony will be in a better place to explain that. I mean, what he meant. Basil Ugu, Nigeria's GDP grew by 4.23% in Q2 of 2025. A number government celebrates. Yet for most citizens, daily life is marked by inflation, subsidy pains, weak naira, and insecurity. Growth remains on paper, not in pockets. Meanwhile, constitutional reforms on security, traditional rulers, resource control, and judicial autonomy risk serving political interests instead of the people. The question is, when will reforms, economic or constitutional, deliver real change for Nigerians? And Warrior Chikwadurum says, I don't think I have much to comment on today. All right, thank you for being here with us.
So, Tony, let's start from the question that one of the callers asked before we went to our Facebook page. Let's start from there before we get to conclude.
I think he was actually asking if we have state police and where there is some level of either misconduct or whatever, the federal police comes in there to take over and things like that. Remember, if you have state police, local government police, there will be no need for federal police again, because where would they work? Would they work in Abuja? Because the police, they must find themselves in a state, and you may not have parallel police system in a state where you have federal police operating in a state, you have another state police operating in the same state. Don't you think there could be conflict of interest? But the people proposing state police have not been able to harness how these things will be. I remember in the United States of America, there is this law or act called Bose Comitatus Act of 1878. What is that act all about? That act of 1878 prevents and restricts the use of U.S. Army, the Air Force, the National Guards for law enforcement in states. It's very important we should understand that the role of policing or the role of police is law enforcement and prevention of crime. And the situation where states are allowed to make their own law without enforcing their law is an aberration. Far from the history of the United States of America, it was not something contained in the 10th and 13th Amendment. Not found, and anything not found in amendment belongs to the state. And that's how from the time immemorial they started with Rangers, and then Pennsylvania, and Texas Rangers, and then Pennsylvania State Police Force. I think that's the modern police department we have ever known in the United States of America. That was in 1905. But the point I'm trying to make is the review committee wouldn't say they have harmonized everything. And just like you said, if that be the case, it becomes a mess of whatever we are projected, where the federal police comes and take over or overshadow or try to show superiority in law enforcement of a state. Oh, you can't just do that. And when you say let the federal police enforce federal law in a state and let the state police enforce state law, that could be the only way I'm looking at it, because they may say federal police enforce the federal law, state police enforce the state law. But if you do it that way, maybe it's something that we keep reviewing and see how best it serves the interest of Nigerians. So,
Chisom, we have to leave here. And quite interesting conversation we have today. And of course, I think there's been this very idea of what GDP is to the people who have been listening to us. Because from the conversations we got, or the input we got from there, you keep on trying to see how they put this GDP growth and then the price of the of goods and services in the open market?
I think we have been able to clarify that the two are quite different. If you're talking about inflation, you're talking about inflation. If you're talking about unemployment, you're talking about unemployment. If you're also talking about underemployment, because if you look at the stat, it says that our unemployment rate is about 4.3%. But people will be asking, why is our unemployment rate 4.3? Because because the National Bureau of Statistics in 2023 made a shift from normal calculation, using the International Labour Organization, where if you work for at least 1 hour in a week, you can't be said to be unemployed. So if you work 1 hour in a week, you'll be counted as one of those who are employed. But it does not also show more about unemployment. And for somebody who said that I was trying to justify Haguna Chamber collecting to it, how can I justify illegality? How can I justify evil? Evil is evil. If they are doing it, it is wrong and it's not commendable and it must be stopped.
All right. So Chisom, we have to leave.
Yes, we have to go. What I have to say is, do your best to be a better Nigerian. Could you please behave better in that little office of yours? What I experienced this morning is what I term a people not loving themselves enough to help themselves live better lives. A people clustering while people like them, their supposed brothers, suffer simply because they have a supposed assignment, which more often than not is for their own personal gains.
All right. Ostadema Adebalubo. On that very note, thank every one of you for listening. My name is Franklin Ebuka. Thank you for staying with us. Stay tuned for the rest of our program.